Hey, it's Jack, Jack in the attic. I think I invented a sock. There's a possibility that I invented a sock. I have been searching for another pattern that uses the technique that's going to be shown in this tutorial, and I haven't found anything. And I asked my viewers, have you ever found a pattern that works like this? And I don't think it exists. If it does, I will absolutely link and give credit to that person. However, this tutorial is based on only stuff from my brain. And I have finally named the pattern. I have decided to call these the Impossibly Simple Socks. They look like this. They are very similar to a banana sock, but the method is completely different. However, it is impossibly simple. It is a 2-row repeat, any toe, any cuff. 2-row repeat for the foot. If you are already familiar with knitting socks, if you already know how to knit a toe and bind off, essentially, are the only two things you need to know how to do, I will give you the recipe in the very beginning of the tutorial so you can go run with that and be free, because it's really all you need. If you have never knit a sock before, we'll get there together. The tutorial itself is for a DK weight sock. These are DK yarn. However, I have tested this with regular sock yarn, fingering weight sock yarn, and it works just as well. Here's an example. The only difference would be the number of stitches you cast on. You'll probably want to do more. And the overall number of stitches for the circumference of the sock. I am linking a sock calculator so that you can figure out your sock circumference stitch number, and then you just follow the pattern from there. We will get right into the pattern. I will be using, I believe this is Knit Picks Hawthorne DK yarn. I did dye this myself, so I don't have a colorway to share, unfortunately. This is a single skein project, whether you are using DK or fingering weight. I have not tested other yarn weights, but I believe pretty much anything would work. That's enough chatting, let's get right to the tutorial. Hello and welcome to Socks. What's on my hand? Sharpie. Hello and welcome to Socks. Here are the socks that started it all. I had an idea. It worked. Here we are. This is a DK weight sock. It has a standard toe and a curve instead of a heel. There is no heel. It is very similar to a banana sock. Here's a banana sock for comparison. A banana sock on the front or top half of the sock alternates sections of knitting and purling to create this curve. I found a way that I prefer, and that is this. If you are already an experienced sock knitter, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the entire formula, and you can knit the sock without looking at the tutorial at all. The general idea is knit any toe, literally any toe of your choosing. Do one setup row of 1x1 rib, and then you will alternate rows of 1x1 rib and a row where on the front or top of the foot you knit one and you slip the purls with the yarn in back. And then on the back of the sock, it's 1x1 rib. That's the whole sock. That's the whole pattern. Any toe, setup row of 1x1 rib, alternate 1x1 rib row with knit one, slip the purl with the yarn in the back, knit one, slip the purl with the yarn in the back, 1x1 rib. Cuff of your choice. Go, be free, knit the sock. If you need more instruction than that, we will actually do the tutorial, but that will be enough information for some people. So I am starting with DK yarn. I have knit these socks with actual sock yarn, and it works perfectly well. I have not knit with sport weight, worsted, bulky, anything like that. I have only tested with fingering weight and DK weight. I'm almost positive this would work with any weight of yarn, so feel free to experiment, but I can't say I've tried it. I am using size 3.5 millimeter or US 4 needles for this DK weight yarn. Yours may vary slightly, but that's a good starting point if you're swatching for socks for the first time. This will all be very dependent on your personal tension and your preference, but again, just a starting point. You can make this sock with any toe. If you already have a sock pattern that you like, go ahead and make that toe and then come back here. If you have not knit a toe, I will go over the general instructions. This is just how I knit a toe. There are a million different ways. First thing, don't get too excited because I'm going to make you do swatching and math, and I'm so sorry. However, online there are tools for this. You do still have to knit a swatch, sorry, but you will need to find your magic sock number, we will call it, the number of stitches for a sock that fits you. For a DK weight sock, I use 44 stitches. I wear approximately a women's size 8 shoe, and I prefer a slightly tight sock. So if that gives you a starting point, awesome. I am going to link a sock number calculator that I have used in the past, and I highly recommend you start there. Once you have that number, we're going to cast on. The cast on I'm going to be using today is the improved Judy's Magic cast on. The regular Judy's Magic cast on leaves some of the stitches, not some, half of the stitches backwards on the needle, and you have to knit through the back loop. So this method avoids that entirely, so you can just knit normally and not worry about it. I use a tutorial from Devious Knitter. It is the best tutorial for this method I have found. I will link it in the description if you want to use it as well. I do not assume I'm going to describe it better than that video, but I will do my best. Here we go. So we're going to use a long tail cast on. I give it a little more length than it needs for sure. And our 2 needles held parallel. We're going to take the yarn kind of backwards from a normal long tail cast on with the tail end on top and the working yarn on the bottom. So the tail end goes over my pointer finger, working yarn goes over my thumb. We're going to take our parallel needles with the top needle, go over the yarn, and twist down and around. That puts the first loop on the needle, and we will proceed from there. With that first loop on the needle, we're going to bring both parallel needles up and bring the top yarn over the bottom needle in between the needles. That puts another stitch on, but on the bottom needle. Then we are going to pivot both needles and bring the bottom yarn in between the needles. Bring the needles back to the center, and now you've added a stitch to the top needle. So we're going to go up and around, top yarn over the bottom needle. I'm going to go down, bring the yarn through, over the top needle. So again, up and around, through, down, and through. We're going to do that until there are 8 stitches on each needle to create 16 total, or your preferred cast on number. So I'm going to go up and around, down and through, up and around and through, down and through. Is that 8? I can't count. Okay. So that leaves us 8 on each needle and kind of a loose floating tail. And the working yarn is also just loosely looped around the needle, not actually secured in any way. So what I do is I take both of these tails, and I twist them, and I bring the loose tail up and through the needles, because this side with these purl pumps is going to be the inside of the sock. So I want the tail of the yarn to end up on the outside of the sock. And that kind of locks the yarn in place so it's not going to go anywhere. So once we have our stitches cast on, I prefer to knit a regular, just knit row, nothing fancy, before I start the increase rows. If you have knit socks before and you prefer to start with an increase row, you absolutely can. I'm going to go ahead and knit across these first 8 stitches. I'm going to kind of hold on to the tail with my finger so it doesn't escape. After this first row, there's going to be much less concern of that yarn escaping. Please forgive any clunkiness on my end. I am watching myself knit through a camera. It is tricky. My first row is done. I'm going to turn the work, bring this needle back where it needs to be, pull the back needle out, and knit across the back row. Back row, back needle. First row is done. I would have done a better job with my nail polish if I'd realized it was going to show up like this on camera. What is that? At this point, I like to get 2 stitch markers connected to each other. This is how I keep track of increase and not increase rows, and it will also be how I keep track of regular rows and slip stitch rows later in the pattern. So in my mind, if I have a stitch marker on the needle and another stitch marker hanging off of it, that seems pretty normal to me. That to me says do a normal row. This may not be the same for everyone. Do what works for you. But in my mind, when I have both stitch markers on the needle, I am like, oh, I'm doing something special right now. I'm doing something. If that does not work in your mind, do whatever does work. So for the increase row, you are absolutely welcome to use any increase you like, including make one right and make one left, knit front and back, or even a yarn over. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do a make one right and a make one left, only because that's what I did on the other sock. And now I have to keep doing that, even though I would strongly prefer a knit front and back. So for the make one left and make one right, I'm going to knit 1 stitch, I'm going to make one right. I will link a tutorial for that, but the basic instructions are to find the bar in between the first and second stitch. I went in from front to back, and I'm putting it on the left needle back to front. That's it. And then I'm going to knit through the front of that added stitch. And you have made one right. I'm going to continue knitting across the front, and when I have 1 stitch left on the needle, I will make 1 left. So I will find this bar in between the 2 stitches, and I'm going to, with my right needle, go in front to back, and with my left needle also go in front to back. And then I'm going to knit that stitch through the back, which is nearly impossible to do on camera. One trick I use is I go in back to front on the front loop, and then I just move my needle around to the back. And knit the last stitch. So now I have 10 stitches on the needle. I'm going to do the same thing on the other needle, and hopefully describe it better this time. I knit the first stitch. I find the bar in between the first and second stitch. I put it on my needle, and I knit through the front. Knit to the end of the row until there's one stitch left. One stitch left, I find the bar in between the two stitches, and I bring that onto my left needle front to back, and I knit through the back. And I knit the final stitch. And that's the second row done. Those stitch markers will come in handy now. Can anyone tell me why I picked a cable so long? What was I thinking? I don't know. I usually knit socks 2 at a time. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Okay, so I'm going to move the stitch markers into the nothing fancy position, and I'm going to knit one regular row with no increases. By the end of that row, you may be able to see a teeny tiny toe starting to form. So we're going to continue this pattern of regular row, increase row, regular row, increase row, until you get to the aforementioned magic sock number, or whatever I said, the total count of stitches you will need for your sock. So I am going to keep doing that pattern until I have 22 stitches on each needle for 44 stitches total, because 44 stitches in DK creates the sock width that fits my feet. So I'll do another increase row. I will be back here when I have 44 stitches total. I am back with 44 stitches total. Several things happened. I switched to a shorter cable, thank goodness, so it's not flapping around everywhere. I am going to do one more row. I'm choosing to end on a knit no increases row. Just my preference. I don't know that it actually makes any difference, but let's do that last row. Here we are. I have ended on a no increases row. The next step after you've finished your toe, whether it is this toe, whether it is a spiral toe, an anatomical toe, whatever kind of toes you are into. I'm sorry. Whatever toe you prefer. The next step for everyone regardless of toes is going to be the setup row for 1x1 rib. So we are simply going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, until the end of the row. And we're going to do that on the back needle as well. I'm going to be referring to these as front and back, and those will equate to top and bottom of the actual sock as it relates to the foot. So I may use them interchangeably because honestly I can't help myself. Either way, this row is going to be the same front and back, top and bottom. I'll come back when that's done. I am back. I have knit my setup row of 1x1 rib. I'm going to take the stitch markers off for just a second because this next part's going to be kind of fussy. This is completely optional, and I don't think it actually makes any sense, but it's what I did on the other sock, so unfortunately I have to do it on this sock too. I am no longer convinced, however I was convinced at some point, that having the top of the sock start and end with a knit stitch made some kind of difference. So I am going to move this last stitch, which is a purl stitch, to the back. I'm going to do that by manipulating the cable so carefully. Not that carefully at all. I am not asking you to trust me on this. I don't think you have to do that. I have knit this same pattern with and without doing that, and the end result is identical. So I would say probably don't worry about it. Moving right along. Putting my stitch marker back on, it was like this. So I'm going to move it to the doing something configuration, because the next row is going to be the first real in pattern row. We're going to start a 2-row repeat where one row is simply 1 by 1 rib, and the row after is as follows. On the front needle, the top of the sock, we are going to knit 1, and then with the yarn in the back, we're going to slip the purl stitch purlwise, knit, slip the purl stitch purlwise. The yarn stays in the back the whole time. Knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip, and you keep doing this until the end of the row. This is the entire secret to this sock. The reason it curves is because there are genuinely fewer stitches in the front by like a lot. That is the top of the foot, the front needle. The back needle, the bottom of the foot, we are going to continue the standard 1 by 1 rib. And for me, that's going to start with a purl. For you, it might start with a knit. Either way, you just follow the stitches as they were set up in the last row. Okay, 1 by 1 rib is hard to do on camera. I'll be right back. I finished a row of 1 by 1 rib. Now we're going to do the slip stitch row. I'll show you again. All of the knit stitches we are going to knit normally. All of the purl stitches we are going to slip purlwise with the yarn in the back. Knit, slip purlwise. Yarn stays in the back the whole time. Now that I say that, I guess it wouldn't matter if the yarn was in the front. It does create a neat looking texture on the inside, keeping the yarn in the back, and you could definitely make this a reversible sock or make the inside the outside. I'll show you what the inside looks like because it's pretty cool. Having the yarn in the back or in the front would not impact the fit of the sock. And then again on the back needle, the bottom of the sock, we do standard 1 by 1 rib, no slipping stitches. And it should kind of start to look like that on the inside. When you get further along, this is what the inside will look like. which I think looks pretty cool. Yes, this is a situation where I pull an already baked casserole out of the oven. It's the only way I could think of to do this efficiently. Regular 1x1 rib in the back. Wait, that should be a pearl for me. See, maybe don't do what I did, because it just messes me up. Good thing this isn't my real job. That is the 2-row repeat. You'll do a normal 1x1 rib row, and you'll do a row where the front needle, top of the sock, you knit every knit stitch and slip every purl stitch, and on the back, you knit every knit and purl every purl. Alternate those 2 rows for always longer than I think, but maybe you're more in tune with your socks. So I would recommend continuing that 2-row repeat for at least the length of your foot all the way up to your ankle, plus minimum 2 inches above your ankle. You really want to get enough curve in the sock that it fits the entire foot. I have found if you don't continue the 2-row repeat high enough on the ankle or on the leg at that point, it just doesn't fit quite right. So you can really knit almost the entire sock, everything but the cuff, in that 2-row repeat. So yeah, not too short. You can absolutely move the stitches to the end of the cable, specifically if the stitch markers are on this end, on the actual cable. You can move the sock onto the cable and try it on. I highly recommend trying it on as you go, because you really want to get the height correct. Again, otherwise it'll fit weird. It has to have enough curve. I really don't know the physics behind it, but it has to have enough curve or it doesn't work. So I'm going to continue in these 2 rows over and over, and I will meet you back here when I have enough sock length. Okay, here we are. I just realized the dryer is running. I'm so sorry. Here we are. I have continued knitting in the pattern of a normal 1x1 row and then 1x1 on the back. Knit 1, slip 1 on the front. I have continued that pattern until the sock is over my ankle. You want to make sure it's at least a couple inches above your ankle to make sure you get enough curve so that it fits well. So definitely be sure to try it on as you go. Where I stopped is about 3 inches above my ankle. And when I say above my ankle, it's about 3 inches from where the foot and the ankle meet, you know, the crease, the fold. So from here, I'm going to finish this last back row. And when I start on the front, I'm just going to be working on the cuff. There are a lot of options for the cuff. You can switch to 2x2 rib if you have a multiple of 4. I'm just going to continue in the 1x1 rib, but no longer doing the slipped stitch rows. That's going to be my cuff. And that is actually the entire sock. At the end, I'm going to bind off, and that's a sock. So let me finish this row, and I'll do a row of 1x1 rib. Because I no longer need to keep track of if I'm doing row 1 or row 2, I have attached the stitch marker to the side of the sock, just so I know which side is the beginning of the row. And if you're going to do any other type of cuff other than 1x1 rib, I would end on a regular row of regular 1x1 rib. So that would kind of be a setup row to transition into whatever cuff you want to do. I'm sure you could also do a folded cuff or any kind of other fancy cuff you want, but I'm partial to the simple 1x1. So I'm going to continue knitting in the round 1x1 rib, and I will come back when it is time to bind off, which will be when I run out of this little pile of yarn. I am back with my silly Grinch foot. Yes, I am happy with the length. I'm going to leave this stitch marker right here so that I know where to stop with the two row repeat in the second sock. So I have this much cuff. I am going to do an Italian sewn bind off. That is my preferred method, but I also highly recommend Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. I think it's Jenny. I'm not sure actually. I will link that for sure because it's a very good, very stretchy, easy bind off, and it's a good alternative to the Italian sewn bind off for this one. I went ahead and cut my yarn. I think the recommended length is 3 times the length of your project, but I definitely left some extra just in case. There are 1 million Italian bind off tutorials that are going to be better than this, but once again, I will do my best and link a better one. If you did a different type of cuff, such as a 2x2 rib or anything else, you will want to do 1 setup row, switching it back to 1x1 rib to be able to do the Italian sewn bind off, or you can just do a different bind off. It doesn't matter. I mean, you want to use a stretchy bind off because it is a sock, but other than that, really up to you. So I have pulled the back needle forward quite a bit just to kind of get it out of the way. I say that, but I apparently didn't mean it. Okay, tucking that needle through the sock so it doesn't get in the way. We are going to, with a yarn needle, knit the first stitch off. Pull the yarn through. Skip the purl, the knit that is the second stitch on the needle, and pull the yarn through. The first stitch on the needle is now a purl. We're going to purl it off and pull the yarn through. We're then going to take the needle behind and through the first 2 stitches on the needle from back to front. And the second stitch is now a purl. We're going to knit that stitch. We're going to repeat those 4 steps. 5 steps? We're going to repeat those steps. Knit off the knit stitch. Skip the purl the next knit stitch. Purl off the knit stitch. From the back between the first 2 stitches and knit the next purl stitch. I'll do it one more time. We're going to knit off the first stitch, bring the yarn through the next knit stitch purlwise, purl off the purl stitch, behind and through the next 2 stitches, and then knit the next purl stitch. And that creates a nice tidy bind off that is also stretchy. I'm going to finish the rest of this sock and then I'll be back when it's done. If you're still here, I will teach you the forbidden Italian bind off technique. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to knit off the first stitch and purl the second knit stitch at the same time. Save so much time. I'm going to purl off the purl stitch in between the next 2 stitches and twist the needle around to knit the purl stitch all at the same time. 2 steps instead of 5. I strongly prefer knit, purl, oops, watch out for that, purl through the back and knit. I didn't want to I don't want to startle anyone with that. So, knit, purl. Sometimes it's too fast and I get caught up. Purl through the back and knit. I wish I could do this more up close, but my camera simply does not have that capability. I'm so sorry. Anyway, that is just, again, forbidden knowledge. You can combine the steps. Okay, now I'll actually go and come back when it's done. I have made it to the final 2 stitches. I have so much yarn left over. Learn from my mistakes that I make every single time. We are going to do something slightly different in that we are going to just knit off the knit stitch and purl off the purl stitch. And that's it. I'm going to go straight into weaving in this end. I tend to use it to kind of fill this little gap. I will go through the first knit stitch and kind of back behind the work and weave in my end that way. And it prevents any little gap between the last stitch and the first stitch. So I'm going to weave in my ends and then we're going to have a finished sock. Here is the completed, very silly looking sock. This flare of the cuff should block out. It always has in my experience. So just do all of that a second time, unless you knit them 2 at a time. I typically knit these 2 at a time. If you make these socks, definitely let me know how it goes. If you post pictures, feel free to tag me in them. I would love to see how your socks turn out. That's all from me today. I will see you next time. Bye!